She was obviously well enough clear to take a few minutes break. David was by now well away and Chris Young had joined the chasing pair, though there was no plan to work together, with Fred being dropped on this climb and Barry shortly after. David knew all too well that with Chris on form he could not let up, but then when David is on form there are few that can stay with him. And it was form that was eluding Nicky Craig, who still had not got over some early season illness. He was fifth but about to be caught by Orange's Kevin Sabiston. In the experts, Carl was on the way to his fourth win and the series championship title with a maximum score of 104 points. Dan Cook was obviously pleased with his performance and he was shortly to pass Nicky Craig for sixth place. He had recently finished his college exams and was getting down to some serious training. Caroline was back in Motor to win her second series race, here showing a great line in overtaking manoeuvres. While Deb was on the way to a third, second and the lead in the series, she'd gotten away from Sian, which is a rare event as Sian has excellent stamina and doesn't fade at the end of races. Isla Roundtree had also put in a final burst to get fourth place ahead of Nicky. Not completely sure of his lead, David checks behind, but he was well clear of Chris in second. With his third win, he would only require one more top result to secure the series.
Did you think the best bit of mountain biking was going downhill? Think again.
A custom-built RF1. It's built specially to fit me in the States at off-road. The biggest problem I have is that being only 5'1", I can't actually get a bike to fit me. So what they did was they cut down the swing arm and made it smaller. The front end of this particular bike has been strengthened using a gusset because this is such a small bike. The main difference with the guys in the team's bikes is that they have titanium flex stems. Now the titanium only comes in 135 up. And I take a 120, so I'm actually using a standard aluminium flex stem, although I do have a prototype Gervin handlebars, other extras on the bar ends. These ones are the short aluminium version. Other little bits that we put on to lighten them up, titanium bolt here replacing the standard steel one. I've also got a titanium bolt under the saddle. Other things we've got is ring glaze skewers on front and back. They're a lot lighter than standard skewers. In terms of tyres, I usually run a Grand Control S on the front and I use a Cycle Pro motivator on the back. Another feature which most of the team are riding with, of course, is SPD pedals. That doesn't come standard on the production bike. The gear setup on this bike is Shimano Hyperglide with Dior XT. It's a standard 12-28 block. On the front I run 24, 34, 46. The brakes are Diacompi brakes, 986s. Which is one of the lightest brake sets you can get, coupled with the SS5 brake levers, which again are very light. And some of the team are also using grip shift, again for lightness. And I've actually got standard shifters on. Of course, by far the most unusual thing about the ProFlex is the fact that it has both rear and front suspension. The rear suspension works on a urethane shocker. I think the suspension really comes into its own in terms of downhilling though. It's actually quite scary, the fact that the speeds that you can get up, so you need to have your brakes set up quite well on a bike like this.
Autumn showers at Sheffield made a mockery of Saturday's dual slalom.
The Sheffield course has a reputation for nastiness. Long sections of tricky single track force riders into groups. In the juniors, Richard won the race in a three-way sprint from Andrew Wright and Chris Muir.
No way, you've got to cut that.
Paul in fifth was unchuffed with his performance, especially since it effectively gave Richard the championship. In the vets race, Dave McMullen stormed off from the start yet again, keen to put as much air between himself and Les Lloyd, who is famous for his bike handling.
Come on, Jeff. Go on, then.
Christopher Horsfield, Glenn Turner and Ray Chadwick lead out the usual 100-plus sports field, making sure they don't get caught behind any less able sports or vets, as there would be serious mid-race queuing in the single track as the bunch has filtered through the bottlenecks. But if you could get clear of the masses and forget about racing, there was some good riding to be had. As in the earlier races, the riders stay together, leaving it all to be decided when the course left the woods for the last quarter of a mile. In the vets, Les beat Dave in a sprint finish, both 7 minutes clear of third place Pete Tompkins, while in the sports, Glenn edged his wheel ahead of Ray's, finishing in 1 hour, 12 minutes and 54 seconds. Helen Edmonds notched up her second win over the sport women, 6 minutes ahead of Tracy Hardcastle, who was fed up with second place. This was her 6th.
The Pro Elite men's race saw the return of Tim from his forced layoff and the resumption of his battle with David on what is their backyard. However, it wasn't to last long as David went out with a wrecked mech after just 1 mile. That left the rally challenge to come from Gary Coltman and Barry Clark, both of whom had only finished a Kellogg's tour the day before. Sally and Caroline, neither of whom favour very technical courses, made an early break, though Deb, who won here last year, didn't take kindly to being held up by either. With Isla, another good technical rider, also hoping to show well. Once Tim's main challenge had disappeared, he set about showing he was back to full fitness and dominance, with teammate Fred working to help regain the Peugeot mantle of top British team. With a Peugeot 1-2 on the cards, any idea Barry may have had of a comfortable ride to recover from the Kellogg soon vanished. Not only were he and Gary trying to chase down the first two, but they were also trying to keep the door closed on riders such as Scott's Jason Shackleton. And even more importantly, Nicky Craig, who was threatening to make it a Peugeot whitewash. After Deb had taken the lead, she quickly opened a huge gap on the rest of the field, despite losing her rear brake, which caused an embarrassing tumble when she hit a cowpat at great speed near the start-finish. I'll leave the rest to your imagination. Sally never expected to get back on terms with Deb, but settled down to a steady ride in second. There was no doubt who was queen of the single track. Break or no break, Deb finished over 3 minutes clear, completing the 4-lap 25-mile course in 2 hours 14 minutes and 36 seconds, with some of the riders you'd expect to see up the front not going well on this course.
I know. She's making as much a fool of herself as I am.
Nicky obviously wasn't coping that well either, but Sally showed she'd continued to improve technically, hanging on to second place 30 seconds ahead of Sian. Isla had dropped to fourth and was tiring towards the end, which spurred Janet to chase a bit too hard. It was a good day for Peugeot, with Tim seeming to have gained fitness from his layoff, and Fred showing he had really returned to form. Though full credit must go to Gary, who in his best race of the season took third to break the Peugeot stranglehold. Tim finished in 1 hour 42 minutes and 13 seconds, over 2 minutes ahead of Fred. While for most of the field, positions were being determined by seconds. Yep, that was Richard racing yet again. Fourth place, but he meant that he was finally looking like his old self. While Tim Davis was yet another top rider to take an embarrassing tumble on the moors.
Sheffield is all about those that can and those that simply can't.
Since most of us trust our lives to our bikes at one point or another, we thought we'd find out a little more about what makes a good frame by visiting the Reynolds 531 factory.
Reynolds' introduction into the bicycle market came in 1935 when Alfred Reynolds introduced butted tubing and the now world-famous 531 tubing. This continued unchanged until 1975, when Reynolds introduced the 753 set, which still has no superior in the bicycle industry. The history of Reynolds was predominantly in the racing market, where in the last 34 years, Reynolds have been first past the post 27 times in the Tour de France. What we're going to look at now is the process of turning the plain tube into the finished butted and tapered components that appear on your finished bicycle. Once the tube is ready to be turned into bicycle components, it has to be very clean, inside and out. The process you now see shows the tube being cleaned through acid, water, and subsequently through vats containing a soap-type solution which adheres to the tube and helps in lubrication of the product in the later processes. The first major process we're going to see is butting. Double butting is when we take the tube and make it thicker at each end for extra strength at the joints, and thin in the centre of the tube where less strength is required, and you get a weight advantage. The first operation shows a tube being put over a bar which is shaped small at each end and quite large in the centre. The bar is pushed through a die and extends to almost double its original length. As the material goes through the die, the material takes the shape of the bar in its centre and ends up thicker at each end. This means it won't slide off. So the bar is taken to a machine known as a reeler. The pressure from the wheels causes the material to spring, and it grows sufficient for the bar to be pulled out of the centre. During this process, the raw material, which starts life in the softened condition at around 30 to 35 tonnes tensile, work hardens and ends up in the 50 to 52 tonnes, which we would expect for a normal high quality racing frame. Here the tubes are straightened to the length over 1000, which is a very straight tolerance for bicycles. Subsequently, the tubes are polished. The polishing enhances the presentation of the product and also enables Reynolds to inspect to see if there is any dirty material or surface defects which might show up in the paintwork of a finished bicycle. The machine we now see automatically takes the tubes and cuts them to the required length. Because high-speed cutters are used, the tube ends up with a very heavy phrase on the end. And the back end of the machine, you will see the tube going through wire brushes which remove this phrase so there is no damage to the builder in cut fingers and cut hands as he's building the frame.
So that's your basic tube, which then goes through the final stages such as threading the steerer tube, tapering the tubes with forks and stays by cold working it in a die. They may then be reheated to enable doming of the ends prior to a slot being milled for the dropouts. They are also overlised to whatever degree is required using a press and die, or bent for the forks. Just like that. Thus you end up with 11 tubes as well as the handlebars that go into making your bike. Add a bit of suspension to it and it could look like these. So, back to the racing and the European Championships in France.
A week after his win at the Malverns, Richard led out the field on a very tough course in his champion's jersey. It was Paul who led the field at the top of the first mountain. Finally finishing 5th behind the winner, Olivier Leger of France. Richard was 9th and Chris Muir 20th. Caroline Alexander was the first British woman home, having shown strongly on the 7-mile climb, but like Paul, lacked experience on the technical descents. Sally started well, but was not on top form and faded to 15th on tiring descents. Deb did the opposite and moved up to 13th, gaining a couple of places over the final jump because she and Isla, who was 9th in the separate downhill competition, rode where others ran. The winner was Swiss Chantal Daucourt, who dominated the race from the starter's gun. The men's race was full of surprises. Tim Gould was favourite, but it was Erich Ubelhardt who led all the way after Tim punctured early, although he managed to move from 15th to 6th in the final lap. Britain's star, however, was Barry, who was comfortably holding second place until a double puncture on the last lap forced him to run in for 11th. Nicky in 14th and Fred in 15th completed the British quartet.
The 7th and final round at Derby Forest in the North Yorkshire Moors. Leading out the juniors was Simon Kipling, our top junior downhiller.
Richard Thackeray has already amassed enough points to assure him of the title, but Paul Lazenby wants a victory so he can at least tie with Richard on wins. And third is still up for grabs, so, as you can see with Mudcamp, no one wants to give an inch.
Youth.
Also in this race, but only doing one lap of the 7-mile course, are the juveniles. There are 3 main contenders, Craig Gilman, Oliver Beckinsale and Richard's younger brother, Robert.
And he'll be pleased to know that Big Bruv's out front on the bumps in the wood.
But Alan Gunner and Andrew Wright are not easily going to let him win his own sponsor's race.
It's good to see Sam Humphrey back. This is his first race since his collarbone. And I'm surprised to see Paul this far down. He was well gunned up for the race, especially after the European Championships.
Thackeray's are having a good day. Robert in the juveniles has just got his wheel ahead of Ollie Beckinsale, winner of the Malverns.
And they're both already well up in the junior field. The youngest riders are heading into the woods. Let's pick up the leaders near the top of the main climb on lap 2.
Alan, who won the Junior Hill Climb Championships a couple of weeks ago, has gained confidence and is taking on the leader up this gruelling climb.
Sam approached this race with some trepidation, but so far he looks as if he's back to at least a good level of fitness.
I'm sure Andrew would agree, while all is not okay with Paul.
No, he usually loves climbs, but here he is looking a bit...
Naked.
Yes, precisely.
So let's have a look at the positions so far. It's unusually tight.
While the head of the field is struggling up the main climb, the tail enders are straggling down the final descent on lap 1.
We're now with Mudcam following the main field through the woods, while up front Paul has lost touch with the top 4, 2 minutes adrift at the Big Dipper.
6th place John Samways was closing, but couldn't quite catch him.
There's a real battle going at the front between Richard and Alan as they head into the last mile with nothing in it.
And it looks as if for the second race running it's going to be a sprint finish.
And it's just as tight between Andrew and Sam.
Into the finishing straight they battle, and the partisan crowd is boosting Richard as he comes in a tad ahead of Alan.
Sam has avoided a sprint by getting away from Andrew in the woods.
So from the juniors to the vets, with a nail-biting battle for the championship between Dave McMullen and Les Lloyd.
Oh, Sam.
Setting off a minute later are the sportsmen, the largest field of the day with over 200 riders.
Watch the early jostling for positions with Mudcam. In a field this large, it's essential to get to the front to get a clear run through the technical sections.
While those in the main field have to go with the flow and hope the rider in front doesn't mess up.
Usually someone does.
Less than a mile out and Dave has already opened up a gap on Les.
That's the sportswomen away.
Come on, John.
This is a tricky descent with a series of bumps making it difficult to get any rhythm. You can see the problem being in the middle of the field.
Yeah.
Now go bump watching with Mudcam.
We're in the woods now and Les has got back on terms with Dave.
Yes, it's quite a technical course, which Les, of course, will like.
Whoops, Dave goes wrong here, which lets Les through.
The next rider through is Mick Ives, leading the Masters but still up there with the vets.
While Glenn Turner, wearing the animal top, leads out the sports ahead of Scott Robinson.
Les is straight away opening a lead as they drop down into the gully.
Yeah, not good news for your teammate, is it, Nicky?
OK, we're near the end of the first lap, and Dave has caught Les once more.
These two never give an inch. Don't forget the winner here is the series champion.
Glenn's still just up on Scott. These two have had a number of close races this season.
Yeah, they'll be pleased Richard Cross isn't racing, giving them a shot at first.
We'll be seeing Richard later in the experts.
On to the second and final lap. Les has made a decisive move as he nears the top of the climb.
He's just checking back there. He's obviously put the pressure on and he wants to know that the effort was worth it.
Dave won at the Malverns, but today Les has got the upper hand.
And Glenn has done exactly the same thing to Scott in the sports race.
Including the same anxious glance over his shoulder. He's well away.
Helen Edmonds out front in the women's race, and you'll never guess who's second. Yes, Tracy Hardcastle.
The time difference for the vets on the climb, you can see it's a two-horse race, with the rest way off the pace.
Les has now gone clear on the far side of the course.
The sportsmen's race is much closer.
Swooping down into the gully for the last time, Les has got a winning margin over Dave, who's given up the fight and eased off a bit.
A quarter of a mile back and we're following Glenn Turner out of the woods with Mudcam. He's steadily opened up his lead.
Picking him up again at the Big Dipper. If he stays steady for the last mile, the race is his.
Meanwhile, Les is finishing and that's the series championship for him.
So second place man in the
Hard luck, Dave.
And Glenn Turner was the first sportman home.
Tracy puts in a massive effort and tries to slip past Helen, who unfortunately saw her coming.
So to the final race of the series, and we can expect a real ding-dong battle between Tim Gould and David Baker. Tim knows that to retain his title he must beat David by more than one place.
Now that sounds pretty formidable, but David said before the race that he's not well, that this is his last race of the season and that he's missing the Worlds. Add to that the fact that there are a number of good Americans racing, and Tim must be in with more than a chance.
And the women's title is also up for grabs.
Yes, it was going to be a four-way contest, but unfortunately Sally's not racing. Well, in fact, it's good news for her since she's pregnant.
One title that's already been decided is the experts, but it will be interesting to see whether Carl has returned to fitness after a viral infection.
Especially with World Championships looming and Carl on the squad. Keep your eye too on Richard Cross, now in the experts.
Picking up on the front of the race with Mudcam and following Fred Salmon through the woods.
It's his teammate Tim who's out in the front, but as expected David is right there with him.
I think we'll see David trying to stay on Tim's wheel and hope to pull clear of the rest of the field so no one can get between him and Tim.
The American in third is Warren Sallenbach, with Tim Davies in fourth ahead of another American, Darryl Price.
Tim Rutherford there, slowing down Gary Coltman in the trees.
There's nothing wrong with Carl, he's gone straight to the front.
Another visitor in the women's race is Cindy Devine from Canada, the world downhill champion. She could have a big effect on the results overall, particularly with a number of top women, including you, Nikki, not competing.
Indeed. If she wins, then Deb will automatically be champion, as Sean and Caroline both need to win to top the table.
So here we are with the leaders at the start of lap 2.
Now, this is an interesting situation. Gould will be pleased to see other riders up with him and David, but at the same time it makes it harder for him to get that vital break.
It's not often you see a pack of 4 in mountain biking, and Barry in 5th isn't far behind. Approaching the top of the main climb, our theories, along with the pack, have been blown apart, as Warren Sallenbach makes a break.
Yes, you can see the riders stretched along the climb, and David is gently testing Tim.
Tim responds immediately, though. He's not easy to pass on a climb.
And here's Carl, still out the front in the experts. Here's the time difference on the climb. The top lads are amazingly close. Tim Davies enjoying an excellent ride.
And up the hill here comes Nicky Craig in 11th place.
Back to the first descent, one of our fastest downhillers, Jason McCroy.
And he's flying. Whoa, that was obviously a bit too much, though.
Carl is really working on this climb with something to prove, having failed to show at the Malverns.
He hasn't got his usual lead, though, with Richard Cross not far behind him. That gives you some idea just how strong the sports field is.
Supper.
On the far side of the course, the gang of 4 is back together.
With Darryl Price heading the rest of the field, they're not far behind.
Leading the women's race, Sean has done what she has to.
She and Cindy have a big lead on Deb in 3rd, who has to hope that Cindy can do the job for her.
By the far end of the course, Cindy was back in the lead, although Sean is only a matter of seconds down and enjoying a fantastic ride.
At the Big Dipper, there's no change up front, but Barry has moved back into 5th ahead of the Americans, though it's still very close behind him.
There he goes! Approaching the end of the 3rd of 4 laps, Tim has made a break for it, and this could give him the series championship.
And it's Tim Davis who's taken up the chase.
Are coming through in 7th and 8th. And let's look at the positions. Gould needs to increase his lead and hope that Davies can do the rest.
In the experts, Carl has now got a comfortable lead since Richard had to drop out after losing a jockey wheel. That leaves Stuart Marshall in 2nd place.
What are you doing? It means I have to ride up.
Tim Fluke's not appreciating the camera's presence.
Sean is back in the lead. Certainly no respecter of reputations.
If Cindy got back in front, it would have been easy for Sean to have said, "I've gave it a good shot, now I'll ease up a bit." But no way.
Sean is so often a dark horse, and I've always thought that if she concentrated on mountain biking, she could be a real challenger internationally.
If Deb, who's a few minutes adrift, is aware of the situation, I think she'll be praying for a Canadian revival.
By the way, Caroline retired after the first lap, leaving Isla in fourth and only 2 contesting the title.
Picking up the experts at the top of the second climb, and Carla's blown. He's now dropped down to 8th, leaving Stuart Marshall to lead the race.
He's obviously not fully recovered. And the next 2 are Jason, survived his crash, and Mark Bicycle. In recent filming for a BBC programme, Jason was actually Mark's double.
Sian's still hanging on in the women's race, but Cindy has her in the sights and seems to be closing.
We stay with them, picking up Cindy on mudcam, firstly at the Big Dipper, and then as she comes down the final descent. She's now back ahead of Sian.
In the men's race, Tim Davies is leading. I don't know what's happened to Gould, but Davies looks like he's dropping Baker. There are some spectators here with a bit of surprise on their faces, but Tim's been looking good all day.
David is struggling.
Not as much as Tim Gould, though. He's obviously blown in a big way. I can't think of that ever happening to him before.
She may not know it, but Deb has cause to celebrate as Cindy's just winning her the series, coming in 30 seconds ahead of Sian.
All the way over from Canada.
Once she'd got back in front, there was little Sian could do about it.
The men approach the final mile and David has got back onto Tim Davies' wheel and it looks all set for a sprint finish.
Tim Gould was obviously going backwards and Warren Sallenbach has moved up to 3rd.
In fact, Tim was just about to lose 4th place to Barry, though he did manage to hold off Chris Young and Gary Coltman for what must be his worst result ever in Britain.
We're back with Tim Davis and David Baker as they head out of the woods and into the finishing arena.
Tim is looking the stronger and you can see he's kicked for home. David with nothing left to respond.
There goes one happy man, having beaten all the big names for the first time and in the same race.
He's always believed he could do it.
So what did Sian think about her great race with Cindy?
Well, I knew I had to beat her to win the British Championships because if she got first place points then Deb was going to win the championships overall. So I knew I had to beat her, so I just went for it. And when she came past, it was only about maybe a mile away from the end, but I had nothing left. I had just gone flat out because I knew I had to beat her.
I've been very consistent throughout the year, and really I came into in such a strong position because the only way I could get any more points today was to actually win. And apart from that, it depended on what everybody else did. So yeah, all the way around, I was just listening to other people saying what was going on ahead of me because I knew I couldn't catch them.
Yeah, that's got to rate as my best ever ride, I would think. But I had a little point to prove today, you know, because I was left out the team for the cross country, the World Championships. I think I proved my point today.
No, I struggled a bit. I had a crash on Thursday and I hurt my shoulder again, but I thought I'd slow me down on the descents, but it didn't really. I was leaving everybody on the descents. I seem to be struggling on the uphills. I don't know why. We got worked over a bit.
Yeah, it was a very good race. Like, it weren't decided until like the last 400 yards, really, on the order of the day's results. All throughout the race, the positions were changing every lap. So, whereas like most races are decided more or less in the first couple of laps, this was very undecided until the last lap.
So the series results for the junior men, and Richard Thackeray's in first place with Paul Lazenby second and Sam Humphries third.
1991 veteran champion is Les Lloyd of Overbreeze, with Dave McMullen in a closely fought second place and Pete Tompkins flying into third.
So on to the women, and Deb Morell has regained the title she lost last year with Sian Roberts in second place and Sally Hibbert in third.
Pro Elite Men's National Championship title goes to David Baker of Raleigh, with Tim Gould and Fred Sumlin of Persia in second and third.
The 91 World Champs were held just north of Pisa in Italy, in what the organisers had hoped would be a relaxing atmosphere, though it wasn't for the competitors. Fred was second in the hill climb, and was in the 20s in the cross-country when his derailleur broke. Tim Gould was a pre-race favourite and was third up the first climb, but he was not on top form, and against this competition he finished in 6th place. Tim Davis built on his fantastic win at Dalby and gradually worked his way up through the field, finishing in a superb 7th place. Paul Hinton improved his position throughout the race to finish in the 30s, with Chris Young up in the 40s and Nicky Craig 70th, but he did do the 3 peaks a week earlier. Nicky also had a great ride in the downhill till he crashed just outside the arena, which was typical of our luck. Dave Hemming had to resort to entertaining the crowd after his tumble, as did Jason McCroy after his attempted shortcut through the crowd. Though it was helmets off to John Tomac, who took the gold in the cross-country and silver in the downhill. Also in the downhill, Deb scored Britain's best ever international women's result with a great 10th place on the sort of descent you just don't get in Britain, with our second women downhiller Sophie Brooks 19th. In the cross-country, Caroline got off to a great start, topping the first climb in 11th, but to her frustration she could not hold a position on the descents. More disappointment for Sian, who was in the high teens when her chain broke. Nicky also spent most of the race in the 20s despite a crash early on, but eventually she tired and dropped back to 36, just 1 place behind Melanie. It was an impressive performance from the ex-roadie Ruthie Matthews that won her gold. Our bad luck continued in the downhill. In the juniors, Simon Kipling qualified well but punctured on his run. Chris Bryan was put out of action when he dislocated his shoulder in this crash. But out on the cross-country, Paul made up for much, leading the whole field up the first climb. Again, he lost time on the descent, but still came through for bronze. Richard was another to suffer from a broken chain. He had been in 9th position, but was eventually sportingly pushed home into 13th by a Swiss junior. The rest of our juniors proved that we have one of the strongest up-and-coming mountain bike scenes, with Alan Gunner, Andrew Wright and John Samways also finishing the top 30. Although the American John Mutolo won, there were some dead proud British parents around. Another well-represented class was the veterans, with Dave leading the British contingent into 16th. Steve Bennett, usually a pro elite, was also in the top 20 until a mechanical dropped him into the 30s, while Les moved up throughout the race to finish in the 20s. 91 will also be remembered as the first time our women vets and juniors competed against internationals, and that is a good sign for the development of British mountain biking.
Make my heartstrings sing, come on!
Deep in the forest of Dalby, where we're hoping to catch a glimpse of the very rare and colourful species known to mankind as a mountain biker. They're a very shy species, and we must be careful not to disturb them, otherwise they may disappear off into the distance. on their fat-tired bicycles. But we can get a word with a few of them now and make our way down to this area.
And yes, they've broken cover. It's a nest of the 8 best trick riders in Britain. We've set them 6 dastardly tasks to compete against each other and to entertain you. It's totally wild.
Right, before we start, let's meet the riders.
Hi, I'm Glenn and my speciality is trials.
Trials.
Hi, my name's Scott Robinson and I'm extremely good at downhill.
Ah, extremely good.
Hi, my name's Scott. I ride for Scott and I'm in the trials.
He's in the trials.
Hi, I'm Dave Hemming and I go downhill a little bit quick.
And he's got a silver medal to prove it, but he's too modest.
Hello, my name's Jez. I'm quite good at bunny hops.
Quite good at bunny hops, 38 inches.
Hi, my name's James. I love crashing and making the crowd smile.
And we certainly love that.
Hi, I'm Jay and I do jumps.
And Jay will be showing us with his instructional pieces later. But first of all, what every mountain biker loves, and that's downhilling.
Well, I've been asked to tell you a little bit about downhilling, but I'm supposed to be trying to find a mountain biker, and I'm here in the Dalby Forest and I can't find anybody. So, well, wait a minute. Excuse me, stop. Do you know anything about downhilling?
Well, I know a little bit about it. I happen to be the reigning world downhill champion at the moment.
Well, there's a stroke of luck, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, what's your name?
My name's Cindy Devine.
Pleased to meet you.
Nice to meet
can
you.
you tell us a little bit about how you got into downhilling?
Yeah, it was 1987. I'd come from a strictly road touring background, and my boyfriend introduced me to a mountain bike that summer, and I started racing regionally, and actually was a very poor downhiller initially.
So you've fallen off a few times on the way?
Yeah, the first summer I had 12 stitches in one knee and 8 in an elbow, and they were just simple miscalculations that now with present videoing and help, I think we can avoid those kind of errors.
Fantastic. So what kind of machinery do you use for this?
This is basically my all-round bike, but it's good for downhills as well as cross countries, and the biggest change with downhilling now, of course, is suspension. These are the new lighter version of the RockShox with a dampening meter on the top, so you can dial in the amount of dampening you need for different types of terrain. Titanium, of course, is an awesome forgiving metal in general for a frame, and I have the bars and the stem as well, so you've got a really forgiving front end.
Super.
You know what I like. Come on, why don't you take another look at yourself? You're just a big kid playing silly games with all the small fries. Don't you know that you never ever liked you like this or liked you like this? But you keep on coming back to all the things you should have left behind. Now, wherever time you put you down, you know that pop wouldn't do that to you, baby. And when they're laughing in your face, you wish that you wouldn't be that way. 'Cause you're a big fish. Well, 'cause you're a big fish. Whoa, whoa, ooh, big wheel. Wouldn't do that to you, baby. Big fish, oh, big fish, yeah, yeah. Oh, big fish living in a small town, baby, come on. No, no, no. What you saying to me? No, no, no. Whoa, whoa.
And here's Jay with his technique tips. First, downhilling.
One of the greatest joys in mountain biking is to descend fast. Skills to descend fast on the trail are exactly the same as those used in dual slalom racing.
Always remember to keep your inside pedal high so it doesn't hit the ground. Never ever use over braking on the front end, and always brake lightly anyway. And remember to keep slightly over the back of the bike, but not too far. Keep your bum about 4 or 5 inches off the saddle at the most. Keep low on the bars, and always keep your weight onto the inside of the frame when you're cornering. And remember, not too much weight on the front wheel.
Weight distribution and braking are very important. Because no one person has the same style as anybody else, theories of this vary greatly. The theory I use is to keep my weight back. This helps me regain the front wheel if it washes. When you're in a tight corner, always keep the pedal on the outside low and lots of weight on that pedal. As you turn, try not to brake. You can't brake and turn sharply. The tyre just does not have enough grip. You have to brake into the corner and then turn. So as you turn, don't brake. You should have already slowed and controlled your speed. Keep the weight on the outside. If you've got your weight slightly to the rear, if the front wheel does wash out to the outside of the corner, it gives you the opportunity to put the power on, which raises the front wheel, and you can pull the bike back in. But it's a bit advanced, so you have to learn that one slowly. The other way is to keep your weight central, and so giving more weight to the front wheel, which will in fact, in most situations, keep the front wheel more stable, but it doesn't give you the opportunity to regain it.
Well, thank you, Jay. The first dastardly test of our riders' skills is a dual slalom knockout, during which the riders have to negotiate a series of slalom poles. 2 riders go off at the same time. One takes the red lane and the other takes the blue lane. Times are recorded at the end of the run, and the riders then return to the start, swap lanes and go again. The rider with the fastest total time goes through. We join them on their second run of the first round to see which of the 4 riders will go through to the semi-final.
And on the red run we have on the left Glenn Turner, on the right Scott Robinson, and they're neck and neck, should I say white porcupine to white porcupine? Well, they were at the beginning anyway, and Scott's taking the way now.
In their first run, Glenn was 6 seconds faster than Scott, which means that Scott will have to finish well up on Glenn on this leg in order to go through to the semi-final. It's looking a little bit too close for that at the moment.
And with the unevenness of the lanes, John, of course, it looks at first if one is way ahead and then another's way ahead, and look, Glenn's just taking it home. Yes, easy, all the way.
So that's Glenn through to the next round.
And here we have Scott Dommett in the red lane and Dave Hemming in the blue lane.
Wait a minute, that's my bike he's on.
Well, I shouldn't worry about it, John. He's not riding it anyway. Scott's already got a bit of the lead.
That's an expensive bicycle.
And Dave's on his bottom as he's trying to make up the 10-second deficit. Their first run, Scott was a whole 10 seconds ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm just flabbergasted here that my bicycle is being used.
This Yorkshire
anyway,
hillside has never seen anything like this.
I think, thank you, Dave. I think we're going to be looking at Scott going through the next round, which serves Dave right for borrowing my bicycle without asking me.
And as Dave is a little dot in the background, Scott goes through. Indeed. Here, Jamie Tatlow and Jez Avery, the third pairing. Jamie Tatlow on the red run and Jez Avery on the blue run.
Jamie was 2 seconds faster on his initial run, so Jez has to finish first, comfortably ahead of Jamie to go through to the semi-finals. Jez struggling a little bit there on this slippery surface.
It's really a bit like a circus, isn't it, John?
Well, these 2 riders are certainly famous for their clowning around. They are very, very good entertainers. Brilliant trick riders, both of them, very famous in the mountain bike world.
And they look equal and equal, but of course this hillside is not equal at all. And
that's right. It looks like Jamie's got the edge, and he goes through to the next round.
And here
have our fourth pairing. And who is that man on the right, John?
That's Rob Warner. He was a little bit late getting here, so we didn't have a chance to introduce to him earlier on.
I see, he's a devotee of the battering ram method.
That's right, a little bit later getting out of bed this morning. This big lad...
If you can't get round, the poles go through him. Anyway, John, where do we stand after the first run?
Well, Rob was 12 seconds faster on the first run, so Jay, unless he really pulls something incredible out the bag...
He's had it.
Yeah, basically.
Anyway, it's looking pretty good as he's coming down here, but Rob is so fast when he wants to be, and it looks like a sprint finish. Jay just gets it, but he doesn't make up 12
No,
seconds.
Rob's through. So, just to recap, the semi-finals will be between Glenn Turner and Scott Dommett, Jamie Tatlow and Rob Warner.
Run of their semi-final. Scott Dommett has the higher red run and Glenn Turner has the lower blue run. Are they getting the hang of this? It looks as if they are.
Yes, well, Scott was 7 seconds faster in the first run, so poor Glenn has a lot to make up here.
The first blood there from Glenn Turner. This is very hard work. These boys have now done this run 4 or 5 times, and it's not as easy as it looks, of course, but it's highly amusing for us.
That's right. Well, Scott has done a lot of trials riding and BMX riding in the past, and he's not that fit at the moment.
Up the hill, and Scott wins very easily. And now Deb Murrell sets off the second semi-final.
Oh, Tatlow's down.
Backward somersault.
This could be exciting.
Carrying on regardless.
Well,
and Jamie, big grin plastered all over his face. Rob's really not been kept right to the edge here, running up the hill for the nth time. Jamie showing a little bit of grass skiing skills.
His 9-second lead in the first run has left Rob a very, very easy finish here. It's a shame that Jamie took that early fall, because it could have been quite an exciting little run, as it is.
Oh, Jamie has decided to remount his bike as Rob slowly pulls over.
So the first heat of the final race, it's Scott in the blue lane, Rob Warner on the top.
And these two are very equally matched. They're both highly talented motocross boys. They've known each other for years. They know where each other stands. They're very competitive.
And I think Rob is actually going around the poles on this run, Nikki.
It's neck and neck still.
An original new technique.
The hillside sorts them out, yes. And as usual, the red run on the inside is an enormous advantage. But remember, they're going to have a second run. And Rob wins, and his advantage is 9 seconds. And here they go. Deb Murrell sets off for the last time. It's the final. Scott Dommett, can he make up the deficit? Rob Warner powering along there.
It's going to take an awful lot from Scott to pull this one. You can see how the grass is not drying out at all at this point. It's still just as slippery as it ever was. Extremely difficult conditions. I have difficulty even staying on the bike. Oh, Scott's got a bit of an advantage by the looks of it.
It's going to be a really exciting sprint finish, and no, Rob Warner takes it again. So first 10 points of the Totally Wild Challenge on Rob Warner.